Change from seeing yourself as separate to seeing yourself as connected to everyone and everything in the universe. Our ego tells us that we are separate, that who we are is this body that we have, and everybody out there is separate from me. Nothing has been more profound and more powerful and important for me than this verse of the Tao Te Ching. This idea that we are all one, that all of us emanated from the same source. And by doing so, by emanating from the same source, we need to see ourselves as connected to every single being, every single person, every single flower, every single tree, every single animal. If you can see yourself in everyone. The Native Americans, one of my favorite quotes, I've used it many, many times. The Native Americans would say, "No tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves." No tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. We are all branches on a tree called humanity. When you read the Tao, when you read this idea about changing these thoughts and changing your life, you're going to see endless verses that speak to the absurdity of the idea of you having an enemy. The idea that you and anyone else on this planet is an enemy. In the Tao it says, I and enemy cannot exist in the same sentence. And he said, even those who go to war, the ones who will triumph in war are those who go to war without an enemy. And they will treat every victory in war not as something to celebrate, but as a funeral, as an indication that we haven't reached the highest place within ourselves to see that even those people that we judge to be our enemy are really connected to us. And it says in the Tao that a bad man is a good man's job, and a good man is a bad man's teacher. A good man is a bad man's teacher. So finding that and seeing that, listen to verse 10. Carrying body and soul and embracing the one, can you avoid separation? One who heeds this power brings the Tao to this very earth. This is the primal virtue. This was so helpful to me as I thought about it. Remember, I spent 4.5 days on each one of these verses. And in each one of those 4.5 days, I wasn't writing. I wrote the last 4 or 5 hours of those 4.5 days. For 4.5 days, I took that verse and I went out into the world and I looked at everyone that I encountered, everyone that I saw, and I tried to see myself in them. The person that was, dressed differently than I would dress, the person who was not as attractive, the person who was very old, the person who was very young, the person who used language particularly that was possibly offensive. When I would look out there and I would practice not judging, because the only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment, isn't it? It's just a judgment. It's just a judgment. And if we want to end violence in our lives and in our society, we have to learn to change our thoughts. There's a great lesson that when we use violence as a means to resolve our disputes, whether it's individually with each other, or whether it's in countries, or whether it's in communities, whenever it is that we resort to that kind of not seeing myself in others, and out of this kind of a consciousness will emerge those people who will ultimately begin to get this. Because if we don't get it, if we don't really get it, civilization as we know it will not survive. It will not survive. We have to learn that the people that we call enemies, no matter how horrendous they may behave toward us, there is still something of us in all of them. And we can figure out a way. Yes, we of course have to defend ourselves, and yes, we don't allow people to push us, or all of those kinds of things, but at a deeper and a higher level, Lao Tzu was asking us to go within and find that place of peace, and try to reach out to that, and help someone to make a U-turn. Those people can be reached, because they have the anchor of the universe located within them. In verse 25 of the Tao it says, "Thus to know humanity, understand earth. To know earth, understand heaven," which is where earth came from. To know the way, understand the great within yourself. Within yourself. Look within and see it. Now, every single person watching this program will have conflicts with somebody in their life on a fairly regular basis, especially if you're in a marriage or in a partnership of some kind. Certainly if you have children, you're going to have conflicts. Now think about what you do when you have a conflict and that conflict comes to an end. The conflict is over. You've expressed your opinion. You may have yelled at each other, you may have screamed at each other, you may not have understood each other, but it's over now. How do you end the conflict? Lao Tzu says, the person of Tao will eliminate all of the pain, all of the stress, all of the anger, all of the hatred, if they decide to end the conflict with love. Just be the one who ends the silence by saying, "We don't agree, but I love you." And it's all over. You have moved a person from staying in the world of the 10,000 things into the world of God, into the world of Source, because the Source has no violence in it. It creates endless numbers of flowers and beings and creations without using any force at all. There's no force there. Here's one of my teachers who lived in Bombay, which is now Mumbai in India. His name was Nisargadatta Maharaj. He said, "Wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves." In between the two. The ability to take a conflict and to end it with love is one of the most powerful things that you can do. It has been a great lesson for me. When we have a conflict, what we do is I will be the person that will pick up that phone. You can be certain of it. I will end that conflict with love. And guess what that does to the conflict? It's over. It's over. You can't pick a fight with someone who just doesn't want to fight anymore, who just sends you love. So I want to summarize some of these thoughts, and there are so many. Change your thoughts based upon the wisdom of the Tao, and your life will change. There's many principles to live by in the Tao. First, remind yourself that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Bring happiness to all that you do. You accomplish much by trying less. It's so inconsistent, isn't it, with what we lived in the Western world. But the less you try, when I go out and swim in the ocean, and I do it almost every day, I try to do between 30 minutes and an hour every day, being out there in that ocean. And I just get out there, and if I try less, my arms just seem to know what to do, and the breathing just all works, and I can swim all day. As soon as I try, as soon as I struggle, as soon as I start trying, the minute that I move myself into trying, it's like if I were to take this little cap here and drop it right there and say, I'm going to try to pick this up. I'm going to try to pick this up. This is what Lao Tzu was speaking about. So all of this, I'm trying, I'm really trying. All of this is called, in reality, not picking it up. That's what that's called, not picking it up. But when I just get easy and do less, See yourself, the Tao says, in everyone you encounter. A great lesson. Every single being, especially the ones that we read about who we're told are our enemies. See yourself in them. Know that whoever they are, wherever they live, they want what we want. They want what I want. They want to be at peace. They don't want to be always struggling. They don't want to be sick. They just want to be loved, whoever they are. I know the skepticism of that. It's like, yes, but, all of the yes, buts. But if they got it too, Lao Tzu wasn't speaking to, well, some are going to get this and some probably won't. He was speaking to all of us. Trust in others, the Tao says, to know what's best for themselves. Trust in that. Trust in the pliability, the flexibility of your babies. God, those little babies, they're so great when they're like, 2 weeks old. You can take their foot, put it behind their neck, stick it around here like this, put it in their mouth. They're so flexible. I mean, you can do anything. You pick them up, you turn them upside down. You watch them when they're starting to learn to walk. And they run, crash, they go down into the walls and all of this. And you think, oh my God, this kid will never walk again. Up they go, and they don't. Trust in their flexibility. Live without attachment and be generous. Be strong by bending. By bending. We need to learn this in our lives. We need to learn this in the world. It's not so important to be right. It's so much more important when you have a choice to be right or to be kind. Always pick kind. Always pick kind. Practice radical humility. Live low. Live low like the ocean. Stay low. And all the streams will come to it. That's why it's so powerful, because it doesn't lord anything over anyone. And rather than looking for miracles, see everything as miraculous. Everything in your life. There was a man who had a Tao experience, what I call a quantum moment. His name was John Newton. He lived back in the beginning of the 18th century. And he was crossing the ocean. He was a slave trader. He had a ship full of human cargo that he was going to trade into slavery in the most hideous practice that was so common at that time in our history. And in the middle of a storm, on his way over there with all of these people, he was 22 years old or 23 years old. And he thought he was going to die, and he thought it was like he must have hit a hurricane or something out there that was before satellites could warn people. And while he thought he was in that state of dying, he took out a pencil and a paper, and he wrote on the back of an envelope, he wrote, "I once was lost, and now I'm found." And it was grace. It was grace that taught my heart to feel. It was grace that brought me home. And when the storm was over, he had a moment. He reconnected to his source. Anybody out there can reconnect to the source, to the Tao, and become a being of Tao. Remember, it's a return trip. And you can make that return trip while you're alive. Remember the parrot. He knows much more than we did. And he returned back to Africa, and he released the slaves, it is said. And for the next 55 years of his life, he shifted and became the most ardent spokesman as an abolitionist to abolish that hideous practice of slavery. That's what he devoted his life to it. A former slave, it's like going from Saul to Paul, from being a person who crucifies and murders Christians to being the author of a big portion of the New Testament as St. Paul. In a moment, it's possible for any of us. And there's a lady who I think has one of the great voices on this planet today. Her name is Cecilia. And she has been traveling with me. She's from Norway. She has sung at conventions and places that I have been. She sings, we call her the nightingale, don't we? She's an angel. She sings like an angel. And she's accompanied by the whales. These whales, these beautiful creatures who are in my front yard every morning on Maui, the humpbacks, who have these beautiful tails that flash and flash, and they just, and some days I'll be walking along the beach and I will hear someone say, honey, this guy was having on a honeymoon there, and he said, honey, come on in. You can hear the whales singing, they're all singing. And she's going, I don't think I want to get my feet wet, and I don't think I get my hair wet. And he said, no, but you can hear them. And I flew into there with my clothes on and went underneath, and I stayed under there for like an hour, up and back, listening to these sounds of the whales, these beautiful creatures in nature, these natural beings who I feel so connected to and so a part of. And she sings accompanied by the whales with a poem that was written by a woman. Her name is Naomi Long Madgett. She's from Detroit, went to Wayne State University. She was named the Poet Laureate of Detroit, an acclaimed African-American poet. Listen to these words. It sums up all that I've been saying. I wouldn't coax the plant if I were you. Such watchful nurturing may do it harm. Let the soil rest from so much digging, and wait until it's dry before you water it. The leaf's inclined to find its own direction. Give it a chance to seek the sunlight for itself. Much growth is stunted by too careful prodding, too eager tenderness. The things we love, we have to learn to leave alone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.